Okay, and we're back. It's been a little while. Been crazy here at the lake. Summer started, in the years past. I'm a lot more active in the winter than I am in the summer on this channel, but trying to keep it going through the summer. We've had a lot of things going on, so you just have to bear with us a little bit. But got some vacation time I'm taking now, so there's going to be quite a few videos that come out here in a flurry. Had a lot of feedback, man, about these threading videos, so people want more. So I'm just going to keep going down this path, but what I've decided to do is to change the architecture a little bit with the SVN. I'm not going to put each one in an SVN. I've just got a solution here that you can see, this multitask samples, and we're just going to add projects to it. So it'll make it a lot easier for you, a lot easier for everybody out there, my trusting audience, to get the source code, to use it. All the instructions are as usual in the comments. If you have any trouble at all getting the source code using, I use Visual SVN. You still have to install Tortoise first, and then install Visual SVN. It's free on top of it. There's a free demo, and then I think it's like 10 or 15 US dollars. So there's not much cost to it, and it's awesome for an SVN client. So this running in Visual Studio 13. Make sure you have .NET 4.5.1 or .2 installed. That's what I'm running the samples in, and we'll get started. What we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about how do I handle exceptions in background threads. That question was probably asked to me 20 times from the first video. So I've got a simple example here of how to do that. The most common mistake I see in code when I do consulting is that people try to handle, well, aside from the dreaded cross-thread exception where people don't know what they're doing, is that people try to do this. They try to handle thread exceptions in try-catch blocks in the main threads function. You can't do that. You have to handle threading exceptions in the functions themselves that are running in the background thread, which you'll notice I've got a main function here. I've got an exception thread done wrong, pretty handily named, and an exception thread done right, where you'll notice that I've done the try-catch, and inside that I've got threading commands where we sleep for 2 seconds, then we throw an exception, we handle it, and we write it out with the exception.toString. Now there's a lot of debate over what's the correct thing to do. Which is my exception, .message, because it's not overly wordy, or ex.toString, so you get the whole stack trace and all of that. Call me an oldie, but I stick to the toString. I like to get all the data, so I do ex.toString. So what we're going to do is the way this sample works is we declare a new thread. We tell it what function that thread is going to run. So first we're going to do the exception thread done right, which is going to pass down here. And inside of try-catch, you'll see we just write out to the console that we're doing one correctly. We sleep for 2 seconds, and then we throw a new exception. And we're going to write it down here. It says, whoops, I failed gracefully. And then after that, we're going to go in here and we're going to do an exception done wrong. And it tells us starting a thread that will throw an exception in a very bad way. Sleep for 2 seconds, then blow up. Now you'd say, well, Dean, it should try catch. We ought to be able to catch that exception and write it out. Well, that's not the way it works. Unfortunately, .NET doesn't work like that, and I can't imagine it ever will, because it's just the way threading works. It would be so complicated to differentiate between the threads on the GUI thread where the exception was handling, and it would make try catches an absolute nightmare. So just remember the general rule: handle your exceptions in the functions that you're going to be calling. So just when you're designing your application, just think about your long-running processes and say, okay, what long-running processes do I have? Which ones might be asynchronous? And then say, okay, well, in the short-running ones, we want to bubble the exceptions up to the GUI to provide user feedback in some form or fashion. But in the really long-running processes, we're going to just handle it in the background. And then on the front end, you might detect some kind of timeout. I mean, there's all sorts of tricks we can do. I'm sure one of the projects I write, because I can see this multi-threading getting into this solution having 20 or 30 projects in it by the time we finish, because they're all going to be short like this. You might do some kind of timeout or something where you tell the user that it's timed out, contact an administrator or whatever, and you might even give them a message. So here we go. We're going to go through it. What we expect to happen is it to pop up. It's going to pop up and say we're starting the exception done right. Boom. And then it's going to blow up. And the beautiful thing about Visual Studio 13 is it'll sit there for a little bit and then it will let you close a program normally. So here we go. Start without debugging. Starting a thread, it handles it gracefully, and then boom, it blows up. There's our window saying it's blown up, and it stopped working, and we're going to close the program. So let's look at this window a little bit. It says starting a thread that will throw an exception correctly. That's what we expect. And then it says exception handled in the background thread. And here is the .to string. We get everything in here, and then notice we get nothing else. It just right here, starting a thread that will throw an exception in a very bad way, starts. I should have probably put a new line in there. I may do that and update the code so it's easier for you to see, so I may format this a little better for you. And then it's unhandled exception, which is very, very bad, right? Those are two words we never want to see, unhandled exception. So this is where it says, whoops, I failed, blah, blah, blah. But notice it's not being printed here because I said we will never get to this point. Trust me, and that's not anywhere in here. That's blown. It's totally blown up. So we're going to close the program. And then we'll let that come out. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Just remember, if you take anything away from this video, there's really just a couple of points. Design carefully your long-running processes versus your short-running processes. Your long-running processes, your try-catch matrix is going to be a little different, right? You're going to handle them in the functions because you fully expect to call those functions asynchronously. I don't use the background worker term very often because that's actually a .NET object, but a background thread, and that sometimes confuses people, so I just say thread. You're going to call that from a thread. So design, take design away from this. The second thing is that don't wrap anything to do with background threads or threads in the main GUI thread. If you're doing that, it's not going to work. So don't do it. And if you look at it and say, oops, I got an unhandled exception, then that will cue you that, you know what, I need to do it in the function. So just make it a habit not to wrap any code that uses threading in the background in your primary GUI thread. And that will force you as a developer, if you're graceful, which all of my audience is, I know, to handle it in the background classes and in the background functions, depending on how you've architected your solution. But it always comes back down to design, right? 2 hours spent designing is worth 10 hours of coding. So design, design, design. And if you're like me, where you get hired to come in and clean up messes, you have to figure out what they did first, and then come in with a design that patches the holes in the hole, and you move on. So anyway, hopefully this video helped. There's going to be a whole bunch of them on threading, so look for more possibly today, possibly tomorrow. Going to take a little bit of time on the vacation to actually do some fishing, take some time off. But as you know, I love doing this stuff, so we'll continue on. Got a lot of questions, personal messages. How do you get a hold of me? And I'll put that in the notes too, but it's deanbortel@gmail.com. It's DEANBORT as in Tom, ELL @gmail.com. So as always, thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.